Happy Monday. So welcome back. Good to see you all again. I've got the first couple of items and I'm expecting a fair amount of conversation, so we'll go ahead and jump in it. You can see the announcements starting with that office. That's really the big announcement. So Zach's out this week. I'm out at the end of this week, continuing to work through the honeydew list to make it so it's no longer a critical mass. So that's photos to come after next weekend. Right now, it's not impressive, just a big muddy mess in the backyard. All right. Next item really room for me is post-processing of leak secrets. I know we got into it last week and we're continuing to work on it this week. Is there anything we need to talk about while we're all here? Like anything we need to escalate, anything that we need to push on? And Lucas, I saw you had one in here, but I was wondering if anything else had popped.
And I'm speaking from a point of, I don't know if it's still the case. Last I saw the issues, it's the case. So Psychot, I think you're a bit closer to this, but my understanding is that we still haven't quite coordinated with AppSec in terms of a common contract between their API and ours. So the current limited assumptions we have is that we will have a URL and a token to authenticate. If they want to do something more complex like an OAuth flow or I don't know, anything else, it could change things.
Yeah, so as we talked about, like we have now 2 endpoints, one for getting the token type, supported revocable tokens. I asked Ethan, but I haven't got any reply from him that whether they have already anything that we can use, any API, any endpoint for testing this stuff. Do you know they have created any endpoint for this work or not? Any idea? Okay, yeah, I'll check with him again today, but I haven't got any reply from him yet. So yeah, that is a blocker for now for that. There's a service that we're going to create for this work. That service depends on the endpoint, calling the endpoints from. So we don't know the current status of the work for the implementation of those endpoint yet. Okay.
I'll verbalize my question. So Lucas, great discovery issue, and there was a nice diff patch in there that I used to start the MR. But I'm working on adding some specs, and I was just wondering if like it was all supposed to work kind of as is, or if there's other stuff that needs to be written and whatnot. Okay.
I didn't test that at all. I don't know if that's even valid Ruby. That was me sometimes I just play with code to see how things should be laid out. So yeah, no disclaimers.
Sure. No, I mean, yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And then, so like there's revocable keys that like is supposed to be off of the reports. Is that something that still needs to be defined in code?
So like there was so there was a thread good.
I don't want to take over this whole meeting to go over that, but if there's a thread we can point to, that's great. I mean, if you want to talk about it, that's great too. I don't want to like take over the meeting.
I think we have time, depending on how long annual reviews will be to discuss. But I'll see if I can link the thread or Psychot if you have a handier link to that. But we talked about that in an issue. There's kind of like 2 things that revocable keys would mean. One is the actual keys to be revoked, and then the other is a collection of potential revocable types. So the former would be the actual key present in the repository, and the other would be something like AWS secret key and GCP account token. So we need to get the latter from the revocation API, and the former is a filtered list from the report itself. So one is informed by the endpoint that we may or may not have at this point, which is what we were talking about before by AppSec. And the other one is we need to filter the report findings identifier by that list. So they're kind of both intertwined, and we're still a bit blocked on that.
And the one you mentioned as the former, that should be part of my MR then, like making that part work. As far as like getting it out of the report.
Yeah, I guess that depends on how. So there's the configuration for the application, which is just basically the raw URL. The actual service that is executing to do the revocations, we'll need to figure that out. Whether or not we're passing those revocations to the service or just saying, here's the entire job or artifact, you figure out which keys need to be revoked within it, I think is, it's up to y'all in terms of how you want to implement that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thanks. Yes, I think so.
It would be great if we can, get the structure of the endpoint. Like how does the output look like for after calling there are two endpoints. So how does the structure of the output for the endpoint response? Yeah, we need to sync up with Ethan on that. We can take it offline. Yeah, I also don't want to spend too much time in this meeting for this. Yeah.
I will go ahead and risk stating my instincts on a recorded call. So since it looks like the request for more information went out on Friday, I'm willing to wait till Wednesday for them to respond. And if they don't, my proposal is we inform them that this is what the API contract will be. We implement that. And if they don't like it, they can re-implement it. And then we just move on. Okay. Does anyone have an objection to that? I mean, this is, to me, we've waited, we've gotten no response. We define it and they can work with it. Okay. So Sakat, my request for you, since you're closest to this, if you would start thinking about what the API, what you would like the API to look like, and then we can start working that way, assuming that they're not going to, and if they respond with that or something different, then we'll adapt, but we'll basically give them till Wednesday. And I will, I'll respond in this issue, informing them that we're blocked and we need an answer by Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and define something to start implementing towards it. So yeah. I'll take that.
That would be great.
Okay. Are we blocked by anything else by chance?
This isn't a blocker, but I pinged Daniel on this issue, but just to verbalize this because there's a lot of issues with a lot of different threads. We previously had to worry about the AWS access key and the AWS secret access key. We no longer need to worry about the latter. So we're just relying on the existing secret that is detected in GitLeaks currently. We probably should double check that regex matches the one that they gave us, but we no longer need to worry about the more ill-defined one, which we had a couple spin-off issues from around like updating capability within GitLeaks. So the scope has been reduced there.
Okay, so the issue that I picked up for update GitLeaks to report capture group, you're saying, is that what you're referring to right now?
Yeah.
Sounds like we don't need to do that right now.
Yeah, really quick description of that. We have a source code extract that extracts the secret from the report or from the repo and includes in the report now to report to the Rails app. There is the regexes that we have to capture certain secrets within GitLeaks capture around something. So if something's like really ill-defined, like it's just an alphanumeric string, then it does something like look for the string Twitter and an equal sign and then something after it and say that's probably a Twitter leak secret. We don't need the capability of extracting the thing after the Twitter anymore with the capture group, because we don't have to worry about those. We can just rely on the ones that start with like AKIA, which is going to be a lot easier to find.
That's really great. Okay. So, Thomas, do you want to think about it later, or should I put that card back down, or sorry, issue back down, and we'll move it to the backlog, or what would you like to do?
I'm thinking on it. I was reading through it before this meeting. My initial instincts are nice to have, but if we've got other things that are a higher priority, let's focus our efforts there, and we'll pick it up if we have time.
All right, I'll just wait for you to respond to the comment then. So later. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm having Monday just like everybody else is. So, all right. All right. Anything else on this topic, or should we move on to the next? All right, it's annual review season. Mountain of links available for you. So there's a handbook page, there's a template there's a templated document that we're going to be using for annual reviews. It's going to feed into this particular process. And there is the working issue that Todd has spun up for all the engineering managers in Secure. So that is and the one other link that I have not included was that there was a training session for engineering managers last week. I will add that when we're done here. That's something I meant to get to before we started here. As has happened for the previous 5 years of GitLab's history, and this is me speaking from what people have told me that were here 3 years before me, the review process is changing yet again. So and further, engineering is doing something different than the rest of the company. The intent of this ultimately is we're going into a structure that you'll hear colloquially referred to as a 9-box, or performance potential matrix is the long form way of talking about it. We're looking at performance this year. It roughly equates to what we've been doing the previous years, as far as I'm concerned, like the compa groups, but it's instead of 4, there's 3. And the way that we're going about bringing information is not a mapping into the worksheets that we've had in last year, and that I've seen for a whole lot of purposes. We're going to these documents that are here. That gets into a different set of data that we need for everybody. The time frames for these are starting very quickly. So what does this practically mean for everybody here? It's the end of the quarter, which means it's time for us to do yet again another quarterly career framework review. So I'm going to get those scheduled. I'm not going to schedule them for this week. They're going to be the second half of next week and the week that's following. I will do my best, especially for those that are in the United States, to stay well clear of Election Day and the day that follows. And so I'm going to be relying on that to provide a lot of the input that is necessary for these sessions, for this activities. The activity that comes immediately after this is what is affectionately being referred to as a calibration session, which is where where it's a discussion of where everybody is and how they fit into these 3 groups. Are they developing, are they performing, or are they overperforming? So that is coming. It's coming later in November, which is why I want to have this particular activity and have discussions with everybody, so that we've had a chance to talk about this data, which will be an input into annual review timeframes. The other thing that's not directly related, because I've been thinking about this for a couple of months now, is that there needs to be a change to how we do these quarterly reviews. This is not something we're going to implement this time around, because part of my commitment to you is that how we do these quarterly reviews stays locked for a year. So what we're going to do is change them the next time. So for January, February, that instead of it being Is it not, is this, instead of getting the four ratings, now it's going to be where when you get to exhibiting strength and exhibiting excellence, where it's a comparison to your peers. Now the reviews that you're going to get, now the feedback you're going to get on the career matrix reviews is going to be what I've always referred to as a three-state Boolean. And yes, these do exist in computer science. We can talk about it if you disagree. But it's all about your performance. Are you doing this consistently? Not consistently, or not at all. And then on top of that, giving pros feedback in the areas that you see listed below there. This is adding a lot of work on my preparation for each one of these, but I see this as information that you need, because I see this as the direct input that we need for things like 360 review feedback coming from me, also performance reviews. All of this is directly tied into specifically this framework that we're moving into for this year. And I think that this is going to be sticky, and that we should expect this format to be with us for quite a while, and we not have changes in annual reviews or big changes in annual reviews going forward. So, and the other part of this is that the output of these quarterly meetings stay the same. It all goes back to the one-on-one templates. It's all about points of emphasis and making sure that you're getting the feedback that you need, that it's tied into what we're talking about weekly, and you know exactly what I'm going to be saying when we get into these big conversations. What questions do you have? Because this is a lot of information. I've gotten a thumbs up. I don't trust your silence. Guarantee you I will be asking each one of you your questions in one-on-ones this week. So, all right. So this is a big change. There's a lot more documentation that's going into annual reviews. I think this should be expected. And yes, Ross, we've had your one-on-one. We'll have you'll get next time. So before the next iteration of this meeting, we'll talk about it. Feedback is a gift. This is information you need. I want you to have it. It's a lot of work, but to me, it pays dividends. So this information you get back, this is my commitment to you, that you get feedback from me on what I see. And we have conversations about these regularly. The request that I have of each of you is that if the feedback you're getting does not meet that objective, or you don't find it valuable from those lines, I want to know, so we can have conversations about it and continue to improve this process. That's my request. All right, I was expecting a lot of questions about this, so I'll move on and stop belaboring the point. So anyway, please be thinking. This is important. This is where the work of the career framework reviews comes into the conversations that matter. So I want to make sure that you're informed and know what's coming. Sorry, Taylor, I'll cede the floor.
All right, so there is a new lean feature proposal template that has a few of the commonly unfilled out sections removed. I will say there is more discussions happening about making it even more lean. So you're welcome to start using that. Just know there may be more templates that appear. There's currently thoughts about, like, do we need a major feature template, a minor feature template that reduces all of the required fields? I still stand by the point that if you don't think a section is relevant, just delete it. So know that there's some work happening there. So there's that. And then secondly, as mentioned in the earlier stage meeting, you can see the customer's Veracode comparison. I went ahead and pulled their PDF into a spreadsheet so that I could look at it filter it, sort it, etc. It is more readable than their PDF, so definitely take a look at it. I think the things that stood out to me when I was reading through it basically is that in the places where we win very big. In the places where, well, in the singular place that we're not as great in terms of scanner quality, we don't lose by much. So I would be scared if I were Veracode. As we know, we're going to be focused on that scanner quality piece. But I think this, when I look at it, feels right with what we see from our customers. And I think this is also a plug for the work that Becca's doing right now. We're doing additional category maturity scorecard validation calls with internal security and developer personas. The results are a little bit all over the place depending on the role and what use case or what task they're walking through. But I think it speaks a lot to what comes out in this framework here, that when you talk about the integration, the ease of setup, the developer workflow, those scores are very, very high. It's only when we start getting into some of the scanner quality, the number of issues, false positives, that we start getting lower scores. So this all sort of checks out for us. As I think I mentioned before, we are looking at what our maturity is and if we need to mature that faster in terms of updating the listing, not us moving faster. I think we're seeing a lot of positive moves from the market. As David mentioned earlier today, like, this really is a huge accomplishment. I'll say I've got another customer or prospect, I should say, in the pipeline that looks very similar to this same customer. They're also potentially interested in contributing to our roadmap. So it just goes to say that we are building something that customers understand the direction and the vision that we're building, and is a testament to, I think, the success that we're having. We're rapidly maturing all of our features, and that's directly because of the work that y'all are doing. So fantastic job, and it really is something to be celebrated. I think, when you look at the amount of revenue that Secure drives, it is non-insignificant. It is, in fact, about a quarter of our revenue. So yeah, lots of great work this year. I think I'll close this by saying, as we look towards the end of the year, I think we've accomplished a lot. Thomas, me, David have chatted about what the end of the year looks like, and we think it doesn't make a lot of sense to push a lot of new features. Instead, really focusing on stability, cleaning things up, really looking at letting things sort of bake for a moment rather than continuing to add things on top of it. So know that I'm not going to be pushing any features through the rest of the year. So we've got our secret detection work that we're doing now, and then we'll really just work on letting things sit. If you've got ideas for, areas that you think need a little attention towards the end of the year, definitely now's the time to start looking at that for 13, what are we at now? 13.7, which will take us into the new year.
Let it be noted for the record that on Monday, October 26th at 10:25 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, a product manager said that it was not important to ship new features for the remainder of the year. You will never, ever hear that from a product manager again. So sorry, I couldn't let that moment pass. So
but yeah, that goes to say, like, we've accomplished a lot this year. I really want y'all to take some time during the holiday season. It's time to plan those things. I will also be taking some time off. So please don't hesitate to do that. We're not stressing about what we've got. We've accomplished so much. And I really just want us to have a moment, recoup, recover, because we're going to do it all again next year.
So I have a question for Taylor. So MobSF we released as an experimental feature. So towards the end of this year, what is our how do we want to look it as a mature feature? Like we need to remove the experimental feature option, right? So when do we decide, like after using this by our customers sometimes, or we'll judge on that, like depending on developers' judgment, like we have unit test, integration test, and everything looks fine, we can now just release it as a standalone feature. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm waiting for feedback. You know, we've got the one customer that we provide the early access to. They keep delaying the meeting. I've got a few other customers that I know are very interested in mobile scanning. So now that it's available, I'm waiting for them to start using it. So once we have some signals from customers that they're using it, it's working, it's finding the right things, that will, I think, inform how quickly we mature it. I know one thing that's on my mind is binary scanning. So scanning the APKs and the IPAW files. Maybe that's the right one. I can't remember what they are.
Close enough.
So that would be how I would think through that. And this is where I get to sort of like, is that adding a new feature or is that maintaining an existing feature as we look towards the end of the year?
I would say, as far as graduating this from an experimental feature to something that's mainstreamed, for lack of a better way of putting it, there are some use cases where we could use some more rigorous evaluation for things like MobSF. The two that immediately come to mind, I know we're Auto DevOps. Are we ready for that integration? The other one that we absolutely need to put some scrutiny on it is for offline environments. Just making sure that we've got documentation ready to go for that, and that we know that this will work in that setup. So there's some things where we need to put some scrutiny on it to make sure that we're supporting the full breadth of deployment paradigms that we have to support. And then once we've done, and we've got the integration and test coverage, so some unit test coverage that we're more comfortable with, that's when I think we start talking about graduating this from an experimental feature into something that's more mainstreamed. At least that's my perspective.
I had two questions relating to what you were talking about, Taylor. First off, you did well to say customer. Good job. Should we have said competitor instead of Veracode, or is this fine? Is that fine to be public knowledge?
Nope, that's all public. It's on our direction pages. There's no secret that we're competing against industry-leading security scanning tools. And
Awesome.
all of that will become much more clear once Forrester and Gartner do their next versions.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's, yeah, my question was regarding that and our placement in that, but I guess that's probably not public, so.
I mean, at this point, we don't know what the placement is going to be, but I promise you the second that we do, we are going to scream about it.
Awesome. I'm super stoked. Thank you.
Which, if you read into that, you hear my confidence.
Yeah. Industry analyst things, at least in my experience, are things we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of our trajectory, but they take care of themselves as long as we continue to deliver. Yep. So we're doing great. This is the fun part. I think I've said to many people here, this is where we know disruption is coming. We know that we're going to be the cause of it, and nobody knows what to expect. This is the fun part. So, to me. All right. Anything else here? Should we move on to? Well, we're at time. So, I would argue we hold. Lucas, I see you've got one on augmenting severities. Do you mind if we hold that for next week?
Sure.
Okay, let's hold that one. Unless anybody's got parting commentary, we'll wrap up. Thank you very much. Have a good week. We'll talk soon. See ya.